É Tudo Verdade 2021, 26º Festival Internacional de Documentários. Os melhores documentários do Brasil e do mundo em mostras competitivas e programas especiais. Gratuito e online para todo o país. De 8 a 18 de abril. Confira a programação em www.etudoverdade.com.br.
Oi, bem-vindos a essa mesa extraordinária da 26ª edição da Tudo Verdade, Festival Internacional de Documentários. Com grande alegria que foi possível realizar uma sessão extraordinária, uma sessão extra, ainda nesse festival, do grande vencedor da competição internacional de longas-metragens do ano passado, o extraordinário filme Collective, do cineasta Alexander Nanau. E a alegria é ainda maior porque o Alexander aceitou conversar com outra querida cineasta da Tudo Verdade, ligada à história recente do documentário brasileiro internacional, que é a Petra Costa. Eles já se conhecem, como vocês vão perceber pela conversa, não é à toa. A Petra Costa, como todos sabem, foi a primeira diretora latino-americana a ser finalista da disputa do Oscar de melhor documentário de longa-metragem, no ano passado, com Democracia em Vertigem. E o Alexander Nanau, esse ano, consegue o feito também extraordinário de, representando a Romênia, também está concorrendo ao Oscar, que acontece daqui a uma semana, em duas categorias. O Collective concorre também ao prêmio de melhor documentário de longa-metragem e ao prêmio de melhor longa internacional, como foi rebatizado o prêmio Oscar de melhor filme estrangeiro. O Collective ganhou prêmios nesse ano e meio, passando pelo mundo, nos festivais pelo planeta, desde que ele começou a ser assistido, se eu não me engano, foi no Festival de Veneza de 2019, e foi uma honra para a gente ter ele participando da competição e vencendo a competição do ano passado, do É Tudo Verdade. Eu agradeço especialmente à distribuidora do filme, a Filipa, da Cinefil, pelo privilégio, no ano passado, de ter exibido o Collective pela primeira vez e pela possibilidade de ter feito essa sessão especial de hoje. Esse encontro especialíssimo vai ser realizado em inglês, ele está sendo gravado, ele vai ter meia hora de duração, e por isso não vai ser possível para vocês mandarem perguntas, né? Mas eu acho que basta para a gente o privilégio de ter dois dos principais documentaristas revelados no século XXI conversando aqui para a gente. Eu quero agradecer de coração a Petra Costa e o Alexander Nanau for being here, por estarem aqui com a gente. Many thanks, Alex. Petra, muito obrigado. Have a nice talk e uma boa conversa. Obrigado.
Obrigada, Mi. É um prazer estar aqui no É Tudo Verdade, onde eu tive o prazer de estar também no ano passado e pelo qual eu tive a introdução ao mundo do documentário e me apaixonei tanto pelo tema. Alexander, congratulations on one of the most amazing documentaries I have seen in a long time, and on the amazing accolades you have received with it. I saw your previous documentary last night, which I was also amazed by, Tudo and his sisters, and thought how both your films have so much, give the feel of that you're watching fiction, because I believe I started to ask myself why, and I think it has to do with the intimacy you get with your characters and how you're with them for so long. So it seems that you have almost like fictional turning points in both films that are so different. One is extremely intimistic, only 3 characters, and the other one is a film of a grand scale, political scheme that keeps unraveling. But I would love to know what you see as the parallels between your both films and what is the kind of your cinematic language.
Yeah. So first of all, thanks a lot also, Amir, and thank you for, having me here to talk about the film. I think that for me, observational documentary filmmaking is something that works not only sort of intimacy, but also, because you have the feeling that you put the viewer, or that the filmmaker learns at the same moment as the viewer about things. But I think what is very important for me is the photography, because I think photography really is able to show, the feelings, the authenticity of people, and that in a cinematic manner. So basically, also when I shoot, I already in my head I start to imagine by the things that happen how this scene could look like. What is it really saying? What is the interior thing of it? How can I touch upon interior thoughts of the characters or interior emotions? So basically, I already think while I shoot, maybe like a street photographer, that tries to get snapshots of situations where you can really, you have the feeling you watch people and you understand what they're thinking about, or you understand what their emotion is, and that's what I try to do on a constant basis, just to get their trust, to follow them for such a long time, and to make them feel as comfortable as possible, so that I can just exist around them and just try to capture their inner life, their tensions, their relationships, and then when you put that together, it looks like sure, like fiction, because because you're asking what they have in common. I think they rather, I would say, have in common that it's always about outsiders that try to stay themselves and not be perverted by their surroundings or by the society around them.
But was that what attracted you in the first place, or these outsiders was what grabbed you into these stories, or no? What grabbed you into these? It would be great to know what brought you into both your films.
Yeah, it's hard to say, because when you start to make a film, you basically think with Toto, I was triggered by one very simple thing. While I was researching to see where could be a story in this neighborhoods and in these Roma communities, I was thinking, what if I would grow up like that? Who would I be? Who can you be as a kid that has no access to education, or whose parents do not take care that they are getting educated or go to school? So how can you stay yourself under so much social pressure that you have around you? And then there was the idea, I would really like to try to get into the head of these kids and film the whole film from their perspective, even keeping visually maybe grown-ups out of it. That was the idea. But the more you enter into a life, as you know, things start to go in all sorts of directions, and life starts to evolve in front of you. And that happened also with Toto. I never know basically what will happen. I just know that the characters I choose are so fascinating to me that I know that I want to explore them. I want to learn from them. I'm fascinated by them. And they need to be complex people so that I stay really interested and curious about them for a long time. And with Collective, oh, sorry, yeah.
Yes, that's what I was going to ask.
Yeah, with Collective, it was interesting because it was basically first a thing of society. We had these mass demonstrations after the fire, a young generation taking the streets in many cities, really for the first time since the revolution, a young generation demonstrating against their parents' world, basically, right? Their parents, politicians, and so forth. And then there was the manipulation of the authorities, and people were starting to die in hospitals. And it was clear that they were manipulating the whole country. It was maybe the biggest manipulation we've seen in this country since the revolution. and I thought, who are these people? How does power work? How can somebody lie although they know they will kill these people? And so it was the idea of understanding how the society evolves, but also understanding power. But I had no access to power. So when we mapped out different characters that we could follow to understand society, we understood that following investigative journalists that investigate power basically might be the best way to do an observation documentary about power, but trying to understand them through the work of these journalists by shadowing their work, basically.
How was your team? How did you guys map this out? It would be great if you told us a little bit more about your process, and also how open you were, because a normal documentary would be just following the investigative journalist from the beginning until the end. When did you realize that you wanted to branch out and follow like the victims of the fire and the government officials, and then go into the government? Were there resistances? Were there people in your team who said, no, just focus on the journalists, that's enough? Or not? Yeah, if you could tell us about your process of discovery.
Yeah, so I mean, we basically always start out with the team, the development team, right? That people that research, and then I go and meet people, do interviews also on camera to see how the people are on camera, because I in the meantime I can very fast sense when I film people or in interview if this is somebody who would open up on a long run, if you really have the chance to get in an intimate space basically with them. And the thing is that with this film, basically the victims and the families were always the body of the film. I mean, it started from them. It was clear that they will be an important part in the film, and we also filmed with the parents and Teddy, but also, for example, we filmed with the lead singer, the only survivor of the band. But then in the end, we decided that that's a storyline that does not fit anymore. The film, and it becomes too complicated. And then when we started with the journalists, it was clear that we followed them, but also in our research time, we also knew a bit who sources might be from the inside. So it was clear to me, for example, that if I manage to make a film in which I can capture the authenticity of the work of investigative journalists, I need to be able to see how they meet whistleblowers. It is one of these, blind spots in a way. We see it in fiction films. We hear about whistleblowers, but we never, I really thought like we have to be able to be in the room when a whistleblower meets a journalist, because, fiction is fiction, Hollywood is Hollywood, but the real people, that's what we want to understand and need to understand now in the times we're living in, because we need to understand who these people are that have the courage to risk their lives, their jobs, and to really blow the whistle about corruption and injustice. We were lucky because all these women were very courageous, because basically the journalists would tell us, listen, that was the deal with the journalists, tell us when they come in, and then give me some time with them, and I will try to make them understand that they are safe and so forth if we film them. And they would tell us, tonight, this night, somebody comes in, you have 5 minutes. If after 5 minutes, people say like they don't want to be filmed, you just leave the newsroom and let us do our work. And the women you see in the film were courageous. And basically I told them, we're going to film for another year, maybe, from this moment. And then we're going to edit for another year. So we will not show this to anybody. We will not publish it. They knew for sure my name. They knew who I am. So that helped. And knew that they can trust me, and also they could trust me because the journalists were trusting me, right? And then I told them, once the film is finished, we will watch together your scenes, and at that moment in time, you can decide if you want to go public with the film or not, which was a big risk for sure for the whole production. I mean, luckily these women were really courageous, because I would have died to have the film finished, and they say like, no way, we don't want to appear in this.
And with the government officials?
With the government officials, basically, when the first Minister of Health was brought down by the investigation, we heard that they're interviewing an outsider for the job. And it was clear they want an outsider to absorb basically the anger of society towards the healthcare system. But I saw it as a chance to come back to the initial idea to make a film about power. And I thought like, maybe an outsider will have the courage to let me inside. Because, you know, I learned in making this film about politics is like, they're really, you know, a politician that belongs to a party would never be transparent. Because all they do, I don't know where it comes from, I'm still trying to find out. All they do is always construct a parallel reality. You know, behind it, there's the intentions and the truths behind the official version of the world they try to project, or of their official intentions. It's never the same. So basically somebody that belongs to a political party or to a system like the healthcare system would be punished by his colleagues if he gives you access or is transparent, because any transparency could harm somebody in the system, because they all did something at a certain point, right? And this guy, he was 33 years old, had a young team around him, and said, listen, transparency is one of our main goals here. I don't owe anything to anybody. Be aware that they will hate us, that I mean, it will be unspoken for them that I let the filmmaker come here inside. I think it helped also a lot that he had a courageous team behind him that encouraged him to do that. And we had an understanding that they would never tell me to switch off the camera. For sure, we will ask people when they come in, you know, if they want to be filmed, we will respect everybody's right not to be filmed if he doesn't want to, or she doesn't want to. But as with the journalists, once we started filming, it became such a roller coaster that we were just embedded and had basically the best situation. We just had to constantly fight for access. Like, okay, don't close the door, let me come in. Like, oh, why do you have to? Yes, I have to. Boom. You know, it was all this constant like, oh, new people are in the room, they don't want to be filmed. You know, you have to make them comfortable. So that was basically the whole stress of, I wanted to get everything because I sensed that it's the right time. It's, you know, it was a time window in society where everybody thought, oh, you know, change can be made. And so it was in the spirit of most people. So it was easier to persuade people into being transparent, basically.
And how long were you filming? And in this time span, how often were you filming? Like, how many times a week were you in the room with your characters?
Yeah. I mean, we filmed during the investigation pretty often. So I think, you know, there were shooting days that would last 2 hours, and there were shooting days that would last 16 hours, right? And we have for sure over 100 shooting days over a period of a year. But the thing is that, you know, once I understood basically that I sense that there is a chance to make a film in which you perceive it as society, you know, if you have the different strings that you film, basically. And it happened that, you know, we were filming with a whistleblower, then we were filming with the journalist somewhere else, and at the same time we had to run to the Ministry of Health because there was something happening, or a photographer was hiding out for, you know, for something, for the enquete, for the investigation. And that was basically also the thing, that translating it into cinema was basically a feeling of, if I can sense it, if that's the feeling I have in reality of the tension of the, you know, this like in a movie, basically, that's what reality felt like, you know, then I for sure can translate it somehow. I'll find a way. And the same thing with the Minister of Health. I thought, okay, good. You can't really change main character in the middle of a film, and I don't know how it works, but it felt right. it felt right to do it, and I thought we'll find out.
Alexander, your film became ever more relevant after the pandemic began and countries throughout the world got enveloped in very similar corruption scandals that would be at the cost of the lives of thousands of people. What are your reflections about that and about the situation in Brazil?
Yeah, this has two things, because we launched the film before the pandemic, and it already, we were lucky that we could still travel the world with it, and it already resonated everywhere in the most different countries, you know, from Switzerland to Holland to Canada. And we understood that everybody was living with this fear that most of all, they have no control anymore over their lives. Even their governments, they don't know what their intentions are and that they really protect their lives. And also since 2016, the whole world was basically in this trauma of leaders that came in to destroy state institutions, leaders that came in to destroy democracy in order to take over power. You know, like in Romania, in many countries, the first institution they destroy is the judicial system. From there on, if they destroy that, they can, you know, do almost all they want. And then there was the second thing, the pandemic came. And suddenly we saw, again, around the world, people identified that their own governments were incompetent and corrupt and using the crisis to enrich themselves and denying the pandemic. And that's also interesting with It's All True, you know, the fact that basically we won the main award. There was Oscar qualifying in It's All True, which we all know lives through trauma, with not only with its political leadership but also with its handling of the pandemic. And I read a lot, you know, things that were written in Brazil over the film, about the film, and something stuck to my mind that somebody said, "Oh my God, Brazil is Romania, and Romania is Brazil." And it's true. I mean, the societies are very similar. The way politics work are very similar. They are young democracies, both countries. And even now with our leadership, you know, Romania has right now 0 ICU beds that are free. Romania has a government that says we're not going to go into full lockdown because then we would have to pay for all the industry that have to go into lockdown. They prefer to let people die than to really work. They prefer to not have to spend the money on compensating the industries that have to go into lockdown. I guess they prefer to steal it because they build modular COVID hospitals that are not working, they're closed down. So the money was spent, right? They did all the schemes that you saw in all countries, like protective equipment that was bought through their own companies, overpriced. So many acquisitions that, you know, it's just crazy.
What would be your main advice for a documentary filmmaker?
It depends if it's a young or an old one, because then I would not give any advices if it's an older one.
A young, upcoming.
An upcoming, I don't know. I mean, for me, I think the most, you know, I went into documentaries because I decided that when I was around 23, 24 in film school. And in a way, when I, you know, I always liked a lot documentaries and the British cinema and the documentaries. But I think when I saw, you know, direct cinema, the American direct cinema, the Maisel brothers, and realized how powerful and how much poetry there can be in you know, filming real life people, I somehow discovered it for me as a form. And also, most of all, I thought that's the right film form that gives you a life where you keep learning through filmmaking. You know, you do not just spend years and years to finance a feature film and then, you know, film a script about your own life, but you learn new things, you meet new people, you know. And I think that everybody who starts out in film, the most important thing is to just not try to be somebody else, to just listen to your inner voice, what you like. And filmmaking is so creative now. Just you can do whatever you want. You just have to be very honest to yourself and just not listen to, not try to be somebody else, then just do whatever you feel is right. And that was also for me the breaking point, I think, when I realized, there is an inner voice. I know what I want. And that develops with every film, more and more. Oh, I know actually what I don't even have to think about it. I just know what I want. And I think that you have to, to work to get there, to just know what you want.
Alexandra, can you tell us a little bit about what is happening in your next few days in the ceremony?
Yeah, we will. It's an unusual year because you know it best with the campaign that takes months and months, which is a daily job, a life job basically, from morning to night. And this year was very different because I did it all from home and online, right? So I did from morning to night every day this campaign. But finally, we can now go to LA to the ceremony in the end. It will be a small ceremony. It will be a special ceremony just with the attendees, with the nominees plus one attendant. And I'm very curious. I will be by end of this week in LA. We will have to quarantine for 10 days, get tested, and then we'll go to this very small, I guess, very special ceremony.
No extras this time then?
No extras. No, just one extra per nominee. Yeah.
Also, really no, I mean extras. The extras were the people who just sit in the seats when you would stand up, so that there would be no empty seats.
Yeah, no, I guess that's not going to happen, and even no red carpet this year because nobody is, not to get people crowded. We're curious. I mean, the good thing is that after this year of doing everything online, I think it's really nice to meet our fellow nominees. And be in the same place, celebrate films.
What are the nominees you're most excited about meeting? What were your favorite films this year, I guess?
Oh, I think I focused a lot. I liked from the American film, so to say. I liked a lot Promising Young Woman. I think it's a great written and directed film. I like The Father, which I think is brilliantly written and also directed and acted. And then I think the most interesting category is basically the international and the documentary category, because it really gives you an image of the world. You really, live in other cultures, so to say. And I think that there's one film that I'm really impressed with, which is the film from Bosnia, from Jasmila, Quo Vadis Aida, which I think is a unique achievement also in directing. Not only that it's a really important story that has to be told, but it's unique directing and filmmaking by her. And for sure, in the documentary category, I think, Time is for sure a film that is very impressive. And Crip Camp and also The Mole Agent, I think is very impressive. But it's an unusual year. We'll have to see, what happens.
And there's an amazing tendency of more and more documentaries being named for Best International Feature.
Right.
I mean, I think it only happened to last year, right, with the Honeyland and with your film, but in the finalists and the
yeah, sometimes you have documentaries in international, and sometimes you have I think that I was asked that by a journalist, like what I think about it, that people think should documentaries be in the international category. And my answer is like, why aren't documentaries in the Best Picture category yet? I mean, I think documentaries are as strong and important filmmaking as fiction films, and it's really a pity that documentaries do not get acknowledged for all the different professions that contribute to making these films, because
in this, I have a friend who edited a film that won the César for best editing and best sound design. It was a documentary.
a document, yeah.
So maybe that will change. And as the last question, I think I would love to know if you know a bit about Brazilian cinema, and what are the things that, if there are any Brazilian films that have influenced you.
Besides your films, you mean? No, not really. I'm not so familiar with the Brazilian cinema. But I must say that I was really so impressed with, what's the name, with the Brazilian film Bacurau.
Yes, Kleber Mendonça.
Yeah, I think that was a really incredible film. I mean, it started and I thought like, what is this? It's a bit strange. But then the whole metaphor and what it really says about society, I think it's incredible. I really liked it a lot. And yeah, for sure in documentaries, your documentary, I still keep, I think I got really interested in following Brazilian also politics and what happens after I've seen your film. You know, what happened with the prosecutor that became the Minister of Justice, and how they forged the case, and now finally somebody was honest enough to let Lula go. So that's what I'm feeling.
It would be wonderful if you can watch the work of Eduardo Coutinho, who is like the Brazilian Pope of documentary filmmaking.
Okay.
Amir can possibly help us with sending you some links once it would be great. You can relax from the campaign.
Yeah.
And lastly, do you have a next project or next projects that you can share, even if vaguely?
Yeah, I have, I have developed, let's say, different projects, fiction and documentaries during that time, but of the campaign, but it's very hard to really get fully focused on them. So all I can say is that they all seem to circle around stories that are transnational, of different cultures, people from different cultures that influence each other. So I think I feel now that maybe because also the world becomes smaller with this pandemic, that I really feel that I want to tell stories that are inter-European.
But fiction or documentary or both?
Both.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I'll have to see, once, maybe you can tell me in a quiet moment how it is after this campaign, how much time you need to get back to normal.
1 year, I think, at least.
Yeah, that's a lot, yeah.
I mean, at least for your brain to kind of get back. I don't know if it was the campaign or a 3-long-year film that you also went through.
Exactly, that's also, yeah, because we are now in the 5th year with this film,
yeah. Well, thank you so much. Good luck.
Thank you.
In both categories. We're rooting for you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. And thank you a Tudo Verdade.